Rick Sonosan was afraid. "I don't care what you do. Break my bones, burn my flesh. I'll tell you nothing." He was also very good at not showing it. Being here, this whole planet, was the worst thing he could have ever imagined. Luckily for him, SIS tended to train its agents for the worst possible scenarios. His eyes flickered over to the opening door, an armored humanoid and Twi'lek entering. Possibly the Darth's apprentice, judging by the deference. Grick almost laughed at his own mind. Here he was, days from death and with no chance in hell of ever returning to be debriefed, but his compulsive disorder was still loyally categorizing every piece of intel he learned. "I'm afraid it will be quite a bit worse than that, Agent," the armored man informed him. Strangely, it didn't sound like a threat. It sounded, in fact, apologetic. His mind added that information to the unknown Sith's file. "Yes, it will," Darth Baras promised. Then the masked Sith turned around, sparing him no more attention. Oh, how he would love to sink his vibroknife through that exposed neck, slicing the jugular and spine in one clean motion. He knew it was a fantasy, even if he was somehow unbound and had his knife. But fantasies are how the mind protects itself, his teachers had once told him. He had found that to be something of an understatement. Commander Pritch confirmed that the slaves have been silenced. "Good," Darth Baras said to his possible apprentice. "I'm still trying to extract the information I crave from this Republic agent. He's much more resilient than anticipated." The armored man said nothing, his composure relaxed. The Twi'lek seemed uncomfortable, though doing a good job of hiding it. Possible recruit. Working for a Sith yet wearing no collar could indicate skill in combat. Non-human in Imperial territory means a high chance of abuse, either former or ongoing. He shook his head, paying attention to the conversation again. "Involves a renegade Sith Lord named Graythan. A particularly bothersome thorn in my side. Meet with my apprentice, Drykel Bale. He's my covered operative in Graythan's compound. Bale claims to have made a key discovery. And just like that, any hope he had of leaving this place alive vanished." Darth Baras, by all accounts, was a prodigious spymaster. He knew escape was unlikely, but he had hoped to break free during transit. The transit he was sure would occur after the Darth failed to break him, and Imperial intelligence would have its turn. Now he knew he was never going to leave this chamber alive, let alone the building. Truthfully, even saying this much in his presence was sloppy. Arrogance had been the Sith's downfall since their conception, but sadly he didn't think it would help him here. "Graythan's presence is useful to me, so I don't want him killed," Baras continued. "Find out what Bale has discovered and do exactly as he instructs." Grick heard the armored man speak again, his ears filtering out the helmet's distortion with ease. "And should Bale, for whatever reason, decide I have outlived my usefulness after the task is completed?" Darth Baras shrugged, uncaring. "Then the strongest will continue under my tutelage, as is the way of the Sith." The armored Sith bowed, turning away. The Twi'lek joined him, throwing him a sympathetic look. He smiled at her, winking. She really was quite pretty. "Now then, Republic wretch, where were we?" "Oh yes, breaking you until you tell me what I wish to know." He smiled at the Darth, spitting some blood at him. He briefly wondered if the Darth was pretty behind that mask. "I won't break. My mind is a vault, and you don't have the key." Lightning flashed, so he let himself scream. He laughed when it stopped, because why was he in pain again? Vaults are made of steel, and steel can't feel anything. "That's right, it can't. My doors are locked, and you don't have the key." Graythan's compound was deep in the jungle, a place Morgan was getting far too familiar with. Veta seemed to agree. "Shall we join the massive amount of soldiers, Sith and tanks surrounding the compound? Maybe use them as a distraction, or perhaps even join in a full assault? No. Shall we, instead, paint our armor green and go sneak about until we find the vague as fuck meeting point?" Yes. Morgan found that unfair. Their armor was camouflaged, not painted green. And it wasn't his fault Bale had been vague about where to meet him. Barras doesn't want Grayson dead. He reminded her. So a full assault won't be happening anytime soon. She kicked a rock away, scaring a small lizard hiding under it. And his opinion is all that matters. For now, yes. Morgan confirmed. Vetter huffed. They fell into comfortable silence, stalking through the jungle. Vetter, trumping his scouting experience by several magnitudes, was leading them in increasingly large half-circles. Their meeting point, a large rock with a hollow tree behind it, was apparently somewhere north of the compound. It was rather hard to find. Fucking finally. Vetter complained. I'll go brood up in a tree, should the meeting not go quite as planned. She was already climbing by the time Morgan walked into the small clearing, seeing the rock and tree combo. It was, he had to admit, a large rock. And the tree was indeed very hollow. It had still taken them 6 hours to find. Then they had to hurry up and wait, talking intermittently on the comms that Vetter had rigged to their helmets. The ones that came with the helmets were, in her words, a disgrace to cybersecurity, and apparently baby monitors have better range than this shit. He meditated as they waited, practicing what he could for flesh crafting. Teacher had given him exhaustive exercises, ones that had to be mastered before they could move to the next step. He understood that, but it didn't make influencing his bone marrow any easier. Still, he'd be ready for their next lesson soon enough. Finally, after 3 more hours, he felt a Sith enter his perception. One that was moving fast. Bale entered the clearing, short-haired and with a deep pair of scars on his face. Morgan faintly sensed that one of his eyes was cybernetic, giving off a strange sensation in the Force. You must be the operative Lord Barras sent. I thought he'd choose a stealthy assassin, not some senseless savage. Morgan looked at him dryly, his helmet obscuring the expression. Nice to meet you too. Well, aren't you the mild-mannered supplicant? Bale needled. But we've got business to handle. The complex is roused, some impatient Sith whelp leading an assault last night. The guard is still on high alert, so sneaking you in won't be easy. Luckily for us, I've got another way. Follow me, and tell your pet that sniper won't do more than tickle. Bale turned around, expecting them both to follow. Vetter scaled down the tree, her own helmet hiding her scowl. Their escort made several more snide comments as they walked, mostly some variation about Morgan's lack of experience. He also complained several times about their slow pace, pointedly ignoring Vetter's existence at the same time. Morgan tuned him out, privately whispering to Vetter to do the same. And here he had thought that coupling the mute function of his helmet to the comms was overkill. They came to a tunnel soon after, hidden deep in a cave and protected by a large stone. Morgan raised his eyebrow. Grayson built an escape tunnel in his impenetrable bunker. Seems sloppy. Bale grunted, climbing down the steep ladder. He didn't. Built it myself. Who knew that studying architecture before becoming Sith would come in useful? A quarter hour of walking the thin, rough tunnel later, and Morgan felt many more signatures appear in his perception, signaling they had entered the compound proper. He felt a disturbing amount of Force sensitives, if not very strong ones. There were so many he almost missed the 3 waiting for them in a large chamber, the door hidden behind a storage shelf. They didn't seem surprised when it moved aside, Bale climbing out first. Morgan told Vetter to hang back, entering the room. A woman with large buns for hair, a Sith pureblood, and a man so heavily augmented he could hardly see flesh looked at him, Bale joining their side. Aren't you, supposed to wait until after I've completed my task to ambush me? Morgan asked curiously. The human woman scoffed. Like we need you for that. No, Lord Grayson is on his way out. Lord Barras has promised us amnesty, should we assist him in this task. Did Barras promise you that, or did Bale? Morgan inquired politely. He felt a ripple of uncertainty go through her, but the other 3 were too well shielded to properly sense emotion. Bale raised his eyebrow, unimpressed. Though I'm more than capable of facing you alone, a smart man uses every advantage. And I am a smart man. Morgan leaned right, the sniper bolt taking half the head from the only human woman when he got clear. I agree. He jumped backwards, sliding into the narrow tunnel. The augmented human followed, speeding past his fellows. Before his training with Lady Trix, he likely wouldn't have been fast enough to even see the man's movements. Now, however, he calmly blocked the shallow swipes and probing jabs, the lightsabers leaving deep grooves into the tunnel walls. He gave ground easily, right until Veta threw the electromagnetic grenade. That's the problem with enhancements, even if you shield them. Morgan mused. He stepped into the cyborg's guard, taking advantage of his second or so stutter. Snaking his hands around the man's neck was child's play, even if he had to be quick. They tend to be oh so vulnerable to sabotage. He twisted hard, the Sith's metal-enhanced spine screaming as it rotated. That was my only homemade extra-strength EMP. Veta called through the comms. And the other two don't seem to be following. Going in, hang back and see if you can't snipe another one. Morgan responded. The room was as he left it, the Sith pureblood shaking her head. Bail was pacing, snapping his lightsaber to his hand when Morgan entered. A senseless savage to the end. Can't even die when your betters demand it. Bail taunted. Maybe I'll have some fun with that pet of yours, after you're dead. She seems like a screamer. Morgan guided the flash of rage into his limbs, shooting forward. The scarred apprentice blocked, smirking condescendingly. So you care for your little slave? Disgusting. Several exchanges went the same, the pair slowly spreading around the room. The pureblood seemed to be staying out of it, and he had the nagging feeling he knew her. He couldn't quite get past the Sith's guard, but neither could Bail get past his. Their stalemate ended when Morgan threw a kick, shamelessly copied from Lady Trix. Bail blocked with his arm, his other hand sweeping his lightsaber down for a slash. Surprise shuttered over his face as he was catapulted through the room instead, a sickening snap reverberating off the walls. The durasteel wall wasn't any easier on his back. Help me, you useless woman. Bail spat, scrambling up. You'll never get the artifact if I die. He snapped to the side, narrowly dodging the bolt that would have taken his one working arm. Morgan was there in a flash, pressing his advantage even as he kept a close eye on the pureblood. Bail, now with one working arm and likely a bruised spine, did the best he could. His best lasted for another 15 seconds. Morgan held his lightsaber under Bail's chin, the heat forcing his head up. The rest of his body lay broken. Tell me what you have uncovered at Graythan. The scarred man gurgled something, hatred escaping him in waves. Morgan was just too slow in removing his lightsaber, Bail pressing his head down into it. Well, I'll give him points for resolve. The pureblood mused, the smell of burned flesh invading the room. If not quite intelligence. Even a blind man could deduce that you're hiding your power. Morgan deactivated his lightsaber, assuring Veta that everything was all right but to stay back. And who might you be? The woman bowed theatrically. Former apprentice and assassin to Lord Graythan, at your service. I was once known by a different name, but you can call me Ladra. I serve the master. Morgan's mind resurfaced a memory of a camp in the jungle, a trial in caves. Her face finally clicked. Ah, a Revanite. I suppose this artifact is one of Revan's mementos. Not a savage at all. Ladra praised. I indeed serve the order. In particular, I wish to obtain Revan's mask, rumored to be in Graythan's compound. He sighed. And I suppose you made a deal with old Bail here to get it. Indeed I did. Sadly, that deal seems to have fallen through somewhat. She shrugged. Plans change. Veta joined them, her head turning to the woman with half a face. I just killed a Sith. Well done. Morgan praised, clipping his lightsaber to his belt. Now then, I suppose it's time for us to come to an agreement. Ladra grinned, her tone playfully mocking. Why, I do so love making agreements. Teacher reclined in his chair, twisting the piece of Force knowledge in his hands. It had degraded an unacceptable amount, but he had been diligent. Several backups were available, and merging the original with the copy would reinforce it adequately. He'd have to make a copy of the copy, unfortunately, but it would have to do. He looked around his office, holding that title solely for the large desk in the middle. The rest was positively covered in bookcases, large, looming monstrosities that used to scare him as a child. But he had grown to love his father's library, so when the time had come to design his mansion for the holocron, he had copied it wholesale. Still, not everything was as it should be. Several doors connected his study to the rest of the house, long since lost. His original design had called for a forest to surround his childhood home, large lakes and mountains to give it a natural barrier. Time limitations had forced him to abandon much of the outside world, but the mansion itself had been completed. But he'd miscalculated, and the decay had started sooner than expected. He sighed. Now he was stuck in a single room, the only balm being that it was his favorite. At least his apprentice had been a reprieve from the sheer boredom. Preparing Morgan's lessons had been a pleasant distraction from his crumbling world, but there was little else to do. At least the sleep function still worked. Insanity would have long claimed him otherwise. Shoving the force construct back into its place, he reclined further. Now would be a good time for a nap, he decided. Teacher set the alarms, making sure to tune them to Morgan's touch, and let darkness take him. Waking, as usual, was an instantaneous affair. One moment he was pleasantly thinking of nothing, the next his mind snapped into perfect focus. It had been more than a little uncomfortable, at first, but he had grown used to it. He focused, taking control of the holocron's various steering and flight mechanics. He stretched, more out of habit than need, and pushed his perception outwards. He, or rather they, were in a small room. By the way, his apprentice and the Twi'lek were practically in each other's laps, and being wonderfully uncomfortable about it, it wasn't by choice. Teacher grinned, not that either of them could see it. Seeing those two together was more interesting than any horror movie. Or maybe he was so bored that anything counted as entertainment. And what delightful trouble have you gotten yourself into this time, my apprentice? He perceived Morgan's shrug, the lack of light having little impact on his sight. Currently, hiding in a panic room, waiting for the estate defenders to act less like kicked ants. Then it's off to kill a mother and son, as you do. Oh, I've gathered some minor wounds here and there. Nothing that won't heal. Teacher made the cube nod. Understandable. It is ever so dangerous for Sith to be in battle. Best to avoid that, if at all possible. I was trying for a modicum of subtlety. Morgan responded dryly. Besides, killing 3 of Graythan's apprentices is plenty for today. He tilted his head. Although I can only take credit for about 1.5, really. Veta, a name teacher remembered only because she seemed important to his apprentice, frowned at him. 2. I only killed 1. Or maybe she had something interesting going on after all. Killing Sith could never be classified as easy, especially for those not attuned to the Force. His apprentice frowned. I'm counting the EMP as half, seeing as it gave me the opening to kill him. Veta hummed, turning her focus back on the datapad in her lap. You're the one that snapped his neck. Or tore it off, more like. I swear, one day I'll find you lifting an actual building, acting all confused when everyone freaks out. Is there a reason I am here? Teacher interrupted his apprentice, who looked on the verge of retorting. Ah, yes. Since we'll be here for a while, I thought we could continue our lessons. Regeneration would be quite nice, especially if I can use it to heal others. Teacher, not for the first time, wondered how far the Sith had fallen. Honestly, expressing a desire to heal others, even your own followers, would have you laughed out the room. Or stabbed out, anyway. Compassion like that tended to breed loyalty, and no one wanted a fleshcrafter lord with a loyal army. He saw Veta's head snap up, quickly looking back down. She pretended it hadn't happened, but teacher could almost see the gears in her head turning. He almost laughed. Seemed it was already too late for that, not that teacher really cared. His old peers would have, certainly, and he reckoned many from this age would too. He shrugged, conjuring the memory of a drink. It certainly could. He answered. It's harder, as are most things performed on others, but quite doable. Morgan grinned. Perfect. How do we start? Well, firstly, we start with actually knowing what regeneration is. And perhaps more importantly, what it isn't. The benefits are numerous, from regrowing limbs to all but halting cell decay, but that will come later. The following principles apply now. Teacher lectured, his pre-planned lessons ensuring a coherent whole. While one part of his taught, another part reflected. It really was a shame most of the personality transfer had failed. If he was his old self, his whole self, he would have been the perfect apprentice. With a Sith like Morgan at his side, he could perhaps even have built himself a body again. Transferring someone into or out of a holocron was perhaps one of the most difficult feats he had ever performed, but with the way Morgan was going through the lessons it would have taken a decade at most. From there he could properly teach, and both of them together could rebuild his empire from the ground up. The Jedi were weak, the Sith disorganized. Oh yes, it would have been a glorious thing. Teacher felt the spark of ambition fail to take hold, slipping between his fingers. He'd lost so very much, back then. Even his name was gone. So at the end of the day, he just didn't care. Not about power, or his empire. Not about revenge or love. Just knowledge. Veta stretched, climbing out of the panic room they had been holed up in for most of a day now. Morgan's senses, or whatever he called being able to see through walls, had told them most of the soldiers had returned to the perimeter. She didn't like, let alone trust, this Ladra character. Still, she seemed to have kept her word. None had even come close to their hidey hole, so the most they had to suffer through was boredom. Well, she had been bored. Morgan had seemed very busy learning to regrow limbs and stuff. Veta suppressed a giggle. First she killed an honest-to-goddess Sith, now her boss was learning to make them both practically immortal. Things were looking up for little old Veta, yes they were. She focused, ensuring her gear was all there. Sniper, check. Blasters, check. Grenades, double check. All set. Morgan nodded, shut the door, and turned to walk down the hallway. They had both studied the schematics provided by Ladra thoroughly, but even so the endless hallways and tunnels of the underground portion of Graythan's estate were maze-like. Probably on purpose, she realized. She kept silent as they stalked, Morgan's lightsaber cutting through what obstacles her encryption algorithms couldn't open. It was after breaking down yet another door that they finally encountered resistance. The patrol, composed solely of droids, smoothly opened fire. She huffed. People would have hesitated, or at least be as surprised as they were. She rolled 2 explosives between their legs as she ducked for cover, taking out her blasters. They weren't needed, she saw, as Morgan cut through what droids still stood after her grenades had detonated. Veta shook her head. If this was all the protection Graythan had to offer, she would eat her hat. Actually, she would need to buy a hat first. You think we could stop to buy a hat on the way back to see Barras? Morgan looked at her with a beaming smile, so she stuck her tongue out. Not that she could actually see his expression, or he her tongue, but she had fun imagining. He also didn't bother to reply, which she took as confirmation. Getting into the vault holding Revan's mask, because of course the woman had insisted they get the thing first, was rather easy. The door, one her thieving eye could see was near unbreakable, was no match for a lightsaber. Oh, all the things they could steal. Speaking of stealing, she peeled off as Morgan went to collect the mask. She very much doubted this whole vault was built just for the thing, and she would quite like a look at what else the Sith wanted protected so badly. To her disappointment, it was mostly useless crap. Oh, she had no doubt that all these paintings and statues would be worth a fortune. If she could find a buyer. Which she couldn't, because no one in their right mind bought stolen art. And she didn't like dealing with those not in their right mind. Disappointed, but still pinching some small jewelry and ornaments and such, she went to rejoin Morgan. That stuff would be easy enough to fence, although probably best if she waited until they were off Drom and Cass. It wasn't like they would be searched when they left. She was almost back to Morgan when she heard the fighting. Cursing, and grabbing her sniper from her back, Veta peeked around the corner. There, surrounded by a dozen droids and a humongous-looking human, was her boss. She wondered why he hadn't contacted her for help, but then he kicked a droid so hard it nearly embedded itself into the wall. Right, he's crazy strong now. Still, best help out where I can. She aimed, breathed calmly, and the big human had a nice new hole in his chest. Some droids peeled off, a decision she honestly couldn't tell was wise or not. On one hand, turning your back on a Sith was just asking to die. On the other, leaving a sniper free rein was so stupid it didn't even merit consideration. In this case it was both. Morgan's lightsaber turned his remaining opponents into scrap, jumping up and rocketing himself off a railing straight at the droids charging her. Meanwhile her sniper was steadily reducing their numbers, even if they had the annoying habit of randomly changing speed and direction. She walked over when everything was dead, waving her sniper at him in salute. Morgan turned to her. Far be it for me to ruin it, but you seem to be in a good mood. Veta laughed. Are you kidding me? We're in a vault, robbing some rich bastard who doesn't deserve his money, and if anyone disagrees I can count on the scary Sith that's with me to help them change their minds. Right. Basically your dream job. Morgan replied dryly. I've got the mask. Seems unwise she told us what Bale discovered first, but I did give my word. Oh, right. Veta hummed, her good mood dampening. Killing a baby Sith. And possibly his not-so-baby mother, who is also Sith. Barrel of laughs. Why couldn't she get the mask herself again? Morgan shrugged, so she patted her sniper. Well, at least we're shooting people that deserve it. He kept a close eye on the various signatures that represented the Sith, but so far none had converged on their location. Veta was bypassing the last security measure, and he could feel their two targets pace in a room not far away. They were alone, as far as he could tell. Unfortunately that didn't mean much here, seeing as most of the security in the inner sanctum was automated. Droids were common, but automated turrets, gas chambers and even one honest-to-God trapdoor all made their break-in slow to a crawl, simultaneously making it damned hard to sense the patrols. The vault hadn't been near as protected, but then most Sith valued money second. Morgan patted the mask, the outline of which was visible on his small pack. He'd packed rations and other essentials for a week's trip, and he was glad he did. The hideout in the safe room already set them back significantly, and they weren't even on their way out yet. Got it. Veta huffed. Stupid thing. Who even uses hydraulic safeguards anymore? The door opened, and he got a half-second warning before a wave of blaster fire washed down the hall. He all but rammed Veta behind a pillar, focusing on his sight. Their targets were still in the room he had first felt them in, but a deeper scan revealed a hollowness that shouldn't be there. Fuck. Morgan cursed, switching to internal comms. They planted decoys. Didn't want to spook them by scanning them too thoroughly. It appears the mother is gone, but the son feels solid. Veta had drawn her blaster, a grenade held loosely in her other hand. We all have our off days, boss. I count some 24 battle droids plus a mounted machine gun. That's gonna be hell to get past, not to mention the Sith. He cursed again. 10-1 that's Graythan's wife, too. She's too well shielded for me to get a good grasp on her strength, and that's not a good sign. Veta holstered her blaster, taking 4 grenades in her hands. She threw them well, from what he could see. Unfortunately she'd never fought Sith outside of an ambush, and Morgan's favorite trick against explosives was used against them. He only realized what the other Sith would do a split second before she did it, but it was enough to act. The wave of power told him that blocking them outright was a bad plan, so instead he helped her push. Their fiery death went flying past them, harmlessly collapsing the hallway some 100 feet behind them. Veta looked over her shoulder, a choked laugh crackling over the comms. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I really hope I am, but was that our only path of escape? The endless wave of blast of fire stopped, and a voice spoke before Morgan could respond. I am Selvanta Graythan. You have entered my home uninvited, Sith. Name yourself, before I sick 100 apprentices on you. Morgan exchanged a puzzled look with Veta. There are only 43 Sith in this compound, not counting yourself and your son. They are also needed elsewhere, unless you'd like the Imperial Army outside your gate to come say hello. There was silence, a rather awkward one. Morgan continued out of sheer puzzlement. Wouldn't it have been more effective to threaten me with your husband? You know, the Sith Lord? Unless your husband can't, or won't, answer your call? Morgan guessed. That's rather cold, even for a lord. Silence, Selvanta demanded. I am still the lady of this house. You will speak to me with respect, or you won't be speaking at all. About that. Why, exactly, are we talking? Another silence, and Morgan had a feeling this was not going as she expected. Well, joke's on her. This wasn't going as he expected either. You have fought your way into the inner sanctum of a powerful Sith Lord's stronghold. You are a breath away from the Master himself. Kill him, and I will let you go. Morgan considered that, exchanging a look with Veta. All right. A sharp pinch of relief reached him, one that Selvanta apparently hadn't been able to suppress. He switched to internal calms again. Stay here and get ready. I'm stabbing her the second I'm close enough. He walked out of cover, half expecting to be met with machine gun fire when he did. Instead the droids did nothing, Lady Selvanta looking at him imperiously. Morgan took one step, then another. Still nothing. He was halfway when the sheer disbelief grew too large to ignore. She was actually letting him approach. She had them. Blocked and trapped, sandwiched between heavy anti-infantry weaponry and a dead end. He stopped some feet from her, the droid standing motionless. He slowly unclipped his lightsaber, holding it up with a loose grip as a token of surrender. Selvanta drew back, suspicious, but relaxed when he just held it out in front of him. 3 months he had practiced with his knives. 3 long months of practicing his telekinesis with an angry blade master trying to kick his teeth in. He usually preferred to use those knives for crowd control, true, but these were proper battle droids. The ones he had fought in the tombs had been a marvel of engineering, to be sure, but older doesn't always mean better. So he grabbed his lightsaber with the force, igniting it and sweeping across the ranks of Lady Selvanta's escort. The muted sound of Veta's sniper disabled another one, and then the Sith was left with only 2. 2 droids he ignored, recalling his lightsaber and pouncing on her. He idly sheared the machine gun in half as he did, just to be sure. His enemy had fallen back, drawing her own lightsaber. Plasma hissed as she blocked his first strike, then keened as she narrowly dodged his kick. Her footwork was immaculate, Morgan admitted. Her blade work was sharp, and her control over the Force excellent. She was his superior in power, experience and knew the terrain better than him. By all metrics, he should have been losing. His vibroknife nearly took her in the shoulder, and Morgan pressed her moment of imbalance. He landed a punch on her stomach, his strength knocking out the breath despite her enforcement. She parried, a well-executed, proper reply to his attack on her right hip. His second knife sunk into her other leg with a whine. You didn't graduate from Korriban, did you? He asked, ignoring his better judgment. Lady Selvanta hastily pulled back her arm, nearly losing it when he didn't take her feint. I've been trained by some of the best blade masters alive. Yes, Morgan agreed, recalling his knife from her leg. She visibly suppressed a winch. Your skills are sharp. Your fighting style refined. He punished a moment of hesitation when he forced her into a non-standard block, kicking her already injured leg. It broke with a sickening snap. But Korriban teaches you to adapt. She lost her balance, so he took both her arms with a quick swipe. Lady Selvanta collapsed entirely. Why? Morgan took her head with a clean stroke. And it teaches one to not hesitate, when the time comes. Shit boss, that was ruthless. Veta piped up, inspecting the slightly molten machine gun. Not saying you're wrong, since we don't owe her jack. She shouldn't have stopped firing, seeing as we were pretty well fucked back there. Still, ruthless. A door hissed open, ominous footsteps thundering down the large hangar. I am Beelzebub Graythan, son of Sith Lord Graythan. You have entered my home uninvited. The speech cut off as Veta shot him, the sniper round taking him in the throat. He doesn't count, Morgan said quickly. He's still an acolyte. Veta scowled, a gesture so strong Morgan could feel rather than see it. He's an adult. Look, he's got a beard. She walked over, looking closer. Or maybe just some patches of hair. Fuck, did I just shoot a kid? Morgan shrugged. He's an acolyte. I am Sith. The corpse gurgled. Sith is Sith. Veta drew back, surprised. How is he not dead? She shook her head, drawing her bolster. The bolt took him between the eyes. Sith is Sith? Really? That's what you want your last words to be? Morgan asked, black humor bubbling. I know, right? Veta complained. It's like they don't practice their last words or something. Weirdos. Alarms started blaring in the distance, both of them exchanging a look. I still say it counts. Veta argued as they walked back to the blocked hallway. He had a saber thingy and everything. Please, for the love of everything you hold dear, tell me we're getting a break? Veta pleaded. Everything that I hold dear is in this room, Veta. Morgan answered distractedly, looking down at the puzzle in his hands. She spluttered silently, thanking the goddess that he was preoccupied with the holocron. An offhanded, heartfelt compliment. She thought, ignoring the warm glow in her chest. My one weakness. Besides, we still need to return the mask to Ladra. Veta made a face. Back to the jungle. Again? An audible click reverberated through the empty restaurant, the two droids that had served them nowhere to be seen. Morgan grinned, setting the holocron on the table. Got it. Thinks he can fool me with triple false pathways. He looked back to Veta, who by now had gotten herself under control again. He didn't seem to register what he had said. I don't make the rules. But I do have a present. She perked up, looking at his empty hands. Veta scowled. I don't think you know how presents work. You and your material greed, Morgan scolded. No, this is something more of a biological gift. Veta raised her eyebrow, enjoying the way his face had gone blank. That was really creepy. Yeah. Morgan forged on. Anyway. Teacher said I'm more or less good enough to do to others what I did to myself. Increased strength. He clarified. And speed, I suppose. But that's the same muscle, just applied differently. She straightened, looking at him with wide eyes. You can make me as strong as you are? No. Sorry. That's a combination of enforcement and increased natural strength. But you should be around 4 times as strong as you are now. That's, Veta said gleefully. That's fucking amazing. Let's do it, right now. A word of caution, Veta. Teacher interrupted, the holocron floating off the table. Not that I really care, but it seems proper. An increase in strength means changing many natural biological processes. Now, my apprentice has progressed adequately since his own forging, but that is not to say it is without drawbacks or risks. An increase in daily calories is required, and I cannot understate how fast you will starve without food. Veta visibly hesitated. Teacher sighed impatiently. Let me finish before cowardice claims you. Since you are not a flesh crafter, or even able to manipulate the Force at all, the changes will revert naturally. I should think it needs refreshing about once every 24 hours or so, after which you will lose your modifications over a week's period. Your daily intake of food should triple, and you will most likely be joining my apprentice in eating the calorie-dense ration bars reserved for only the largest of species. That's not so bad. Veta rebounded. You made it sound like I would starve in hours. About a week and a half, From the normal 3 weeks. Teacher confirmed. She nodded her head, her leku bouncing against the bench. No price too high to join Morgan in slapping around half-ton battle droids. That's not how that works. Morgan muttered. Anyway. Beside that, there are other risks. The greatest of which will be me changing your body's natural biology. Veta tilted her head. So I could change literally anything. Have access to everything. Oh, like that. She waved her hand dismissively. I trust you. Not like you can't do pretty much whatever you want anyway. Morgan smiled, one of those rare moments where it reached his eyes. Veta grinned, ignoring the way her stomach did a slight flip. I'll endeavor to live up to it. He promised. Now, this shouldn't take long. Kindly keep an eye out so I don't get shanked. Veta kept still as he reached over the table, putting a hand on her shoulder. Teacher muttered something inaudible, but she ignored him. Tingling started soon after, with cramps joining them after some 10 minutes. Nothing too bad, and they usually stopped mid-spasm. It didn't hurt as such, just felt strange. After about half an hour Morgan opened his eyes, smirking. All done. Veta frowned. I don't feel any different. She grabbed the edge of the table, bolted to the floor. She didn't see Morgan's eyes widen, or the way teacher floated over the hide behind his shoulder. Instead she was focused on her arms, and how her hands felt gripping the table. It didn't feel like super strength. She shifted her grip, pulling upwards like she wanted the table on the ceiling. Metal groaned as the table bent, snapping soon after. She held the piece in hand, confusion on her face. That's. You said 4 times, right? Not 40? Morgan gently took the piece of table from her hands, setting it aside. Yes, about 4 times. But people underestimate how much strength that is. Still, I shouldn't be able to snap steel like that. She protested. Also, I'm really, really hungry. Morgan handed her a ration bar, having one ready. I doubt this shitty cantina bought the highest grade durasteel available, or has been maintaining the stuff. Veta bit a piece off, looking down at it questioningly. Morgan answered her unspoken question before she could ask it. It's not just arms and legs. Jaw, fingers and all other small muscles have increased in strength too. Be careful not to shatter your teeth, and yes, that is something you can do now. What the fuck, she said, feeling her teeth break the dry, hard ration bar with little issue. How? Part of it is to remove, or, more accurately, suppress the body's own limitations. Normally this would do nothing but make you snap every little tendon and bone you have, but I've strengthened those too. This is so cool. She tried to stand, slamming her knees into what remained of the table. Fuck. Ow, less cool. You'll need time to adjust. Morgan assured her. The fetch quest for Ladra will do fine, since you're not a close combat fighter. Took me 3 months to get used to it, but that was also my first time doing the procedure. Slow and steady seemed wise. She finally got out of the booth, clenching her fists experimentally. She smirked. Any other game-changing presents you have for me? Veta saw Morgan's face scrunch thoughtfully, waving her hands. Just joking. I know. But there might be. He spat out a string of technobabble she couldn't understand, teacher answering in the same. She rolled her eyes, falling to the ground. She'd always been in good shape, and after the scouts she thought she'd been in the best shape of her life. She finished her 200th push-up before her boss and teacher stopped gossiping, her muscles barely feeling the strain. Veta pushed herself up as hard as she could, flailing her arms as she went soaring in the air much higher than she had predicted. She waved her hands as she landed on her feet, skillfully pretending that was her plan all along. Morgan didn't seem to buy it. So, there is something we can do. She hopped onto the counter, kicking her feet. The greatest danger to those not attuned to the Force is Force users, be they Sith or Jedi. Since you can't shield yourself, or protect yourself in other ways from being ragdolled, it's really easy to kill or incapacitate you. Morgan cleared his throat. We can, after more research and testing, harden the force around you. Or in you, kind of. Everyone is connected to it, and according to teacher it's possible to make it very hard to influence your body. Your mind will shrug off all but the most skillful attacks, and even those will be muted. And the downsides? She asked idly. That already sounded pretty damn good. Sure would make killing Sith easier too. Teacher answered, somehow rolling his eyes. There are none. Unless you count needing a skilled fleshcrafter to refresh it daily, and of course becoming a much larger threat to that fleshcrafter in the process. They're usually lining up to perform the operation, just down aisle 3. Next to the dish soap. Yes. Veta stuck out her tongue. Special bone crafters or whatever. Less talky talk, more hardy hardening. I'll need time to properly instruct my apprentice in its application, and beware that sufficiently powerful force users can still tear you limb from limb. Teacher huffed. The more skilled Morgan becomes, the more power it will take to break. We'll do it before the next operation that Barras has no doubt lined up for us. Morgan assured her. Now let me see who I need to pay for that table, then we can get out of here. He walked off, far enough away Veta was sure he couldn't hear. She leaned down, keeping her voice soft. I don't take this stuff lightly. You don't need to be so close. I can hear you just as well from here as from the other side of the room. It's not like I have ears, teacher snapped. Then he sighed. I know you don't. Just, maybe tell him that once in a while, Morgan returned, stopping her from replying. She beamed at him, poking the cube. Teacher hissed, making her cackle in delight. He watched, amazement clear on her face, as Veta scampered up another tree. She'd really been taking his suggestion of practicing with her new strength to heart, even if she still loathed having to finish the fetch quest. The camp of the Revanites was, as with everything else they did on this planet, deep in the jungle. It would have been a dangerous trip, if it hadn't been both of them that made it. Last time he had to kill, or scare away, numerous predators before they were left alone. Veta was more than capable of killing them, as her graduation exam from the Scouts had shown, but it slowed them to a crawl. Now she made near-suicidal jumps from tree to tree, using her strength to leap perilous distances. What predators they came across were swiftly put down, her sniper held loosely in one hand as she ran. It was, all told, a rather relaxing trip. Also a tad boring, which gave him plenty of time to come up with ways to needle her. I'm glad you're finally taking your responsibility seriously, he told her imperiously as she jumped down next to him. A Sith's blade should not have to touch such lowly lifeforms. Veta rolled her eyes, turning away from him. That's my job now, is it? I'm pretty sure your job is whatever I want it to be. Morgan considered, putting a hand to his chin. Yes, I'm sure I've read something like that back on Korriban. He grunted. Then again, most of what I've read on Korriban was senseless propaganda, so maybe not. She didn't even bother to reply, which was rather rude, in his opinion, and walked ahead of him. He smiled, jogging after her. He felt the people some minutes later, coming to a clearing. The camp itself contained maybe 300 souls, and was rather boring to look at. The warriors and guards said nothing as they approached, letting them inside without trouble. They were odd. They looked odd, sure, robes and symbols clearly marking them as a cult. But it was more than that. Not many were force-sensitive, yet more than he expected. Maybe some 20 in total, 2 of them at the entrance. The 2, twins by the look of them, felt focused. Not terribly powerful, maybe as strong as the average graduating acolyte from Korriban, but strangely sharp. The pair said nothing as his perception washed over them, and he realized they didn't even feel it. That spoke of inexperience that clashed with the ease of their enforcement, even if it wasn't quite up to his level. The encampment wasn't terribly large, and he was still puzzling over the twins as Ladra approached them. The conquering hero returns. She smirked. And with gifts, I hope. Morgan pulled the mask from his pack, handing it over silently. Ladra smiled down at it. Very good. The master wishes to speak with you. Come. She walked away, leaving him to exchange a look with Veta. She shrugged, so they followed. Veta's voice crackled over their calms, hidden from prying ears. Look there. Mandalorians sparring with troopers. There's even a major here, and he feels safe enough to leave his uniform on. What even is this place? Revanites. A cult born from Revan's shadow. She snorted, the sound distorted over the calms. Don't mistake this for a group of mad cultists. He warned. Revan brought this galaxy to its knees at his height, and he cared nothing for the prejudice that plagues the Empire today. Worse, he inspired loyalty like few before or since. When he defeated Mandalore, who was at the time threatening galaxy-wide domination, he earned their respect like few have before. Wherever he went, loyalty followed. In the Jedi before his fall, and in the Republic military after. In the Mandalorians when he bested them. Then in the Jedi once again, after they wiped his mind. Veta was silent for a few seconds, even as they followed Ladra out of the camp. It seemed the master didn't live with his followers. Unity and purpose. I'll admit that's a scary thing. What makes a Jedi like that fall? Morgan said nothing for a few seconds, looking at the sky. I don't know. He lied. Her voice was soft. Yes, you do. But it's not something I want to know, is it? If you do, I will tell you. Morgan promised. But not now, and certainly not here. The trio entered the cave they came to in silence, Ladra apparently comfortable to let them talk in private. It was well furnished, a woman reading a book in the corner. A fire crackled at its center, burning so clean no smoke could be seen. The book was bound with the skin of beasts, letters from a language he didn't know on the cover. The paper looked rough, as if handmade. She stood as they walked inside. Welcome, Morgan of Nowhere. She turned to Veta, nodding her head. Welcome, Cena of Ryloth. I am the master. He returned the gesture as Ladra handed her the mask. Follower of Revan. She looked down at the mask, running it over in her hands. A fake. What a shame. The master threw the mask in the fire, turning back to them. At least it brought you to me. Tell me, Sith, what do you know of Revan? Morgan looked at her, casting his perception out into the Force. Since coming to Dromund Kaas he had focused almost exclusively at sharpening his martial skills, but he had not forgotten what he had seen on Korriban. Shadows beyond shape. Old things that refused to die, holding more knowledge than any library could contain. He had seen what stalked this galaxy, and he sure hadn't forgotten. Nothing whispered to him. No old ghost came to tell him secrets. In fact, the woman felt as normal as could be. That alone set off alarm bells like little else. What exactly are you? The master laughed, a surprisingly warm sound. That's a bit rude. Veta had warily backed up by now, eyeing Ladra. Morgan ignored them both. I am what is called a seedling. Revan knew his time was limited, his shackles coming to strangle him sooner or later. So in a work fueled by dying dreams, he made us. Little seeds in the Force, to bind to embryos at conception. She smiled, her eyes looking into the past. It was all very confusing when I was a girl. It wasn't until I found the mysteries he had left behind on Korriban that it all made sense. That I became who I was always meant to be. The master looked back at him, answering his question before he could ask it. It does not matter that I am here. It does not matter if the Dark Council finds us. I would rather they not, but in the end my purpose here has been fulfilled for years now. Morgan looked at her, motioning to the fire where the mask was still burning. So why am I here? What do you want with me? She looked surprised. I was curious about a man with no past, that is all. You have bargained with loyal Ladra here, and have both upheld your word and enjoyed its spoils. I want nothing from you. Then we will be leaving, Morgan said firmly. The master waved indifferently, sitting back down. Of course. Walk the path with true purpose, Morgan of Nowhere. Morgan half-stepped in front of Vetter as they entered Barras's chamber, the scream that emanated washing over his mental shield. It held, but hadn't been directed at him in the first place. Vetter had her hands over her ears, looking around wildly. He ruthlessly pressed down his instinct to help her, instead turning to Barras. Soft footsteps echoed as Vetter abandoned him in favor of the hallway, smart girl that she was. "I cannot break him," Darth Barras intoned quietly. Waves of rage washed over the room, Morgan hastily reinforcing his shields. It ebbed after some seconds, the droid keeping the Cis agent alive beeping in distress. "This is impossible," the Lord told him with certainty. "An unknown power must be shielding this man, which only confirms my suspicions." Morgan bowed his head in agreement. It was quite possible, but it was just as likely that the spy simply didn't care about pain. Then again, he had some idea how the Force could augment torture. "This Republic agent is the key to unlocking the threat we face. I must harness my rage and frustration. They will lead me to an answer." Darth Barras flicked his hand, and the agent was injected with a serum. His eyes drooped, and soon enough it was just the two of them. "The word has spread that Lord Graython is incensed at the slaying of his secret son. I take it that was your handiwork?" Morgan nodded. "Indeed. Not without problems, unfortunately. Bale tried to have me killed before the task could even begin, and he took his own life before I was able to extract the needed information from him." No matter. Barras dismissed. He fulfilled his primary purpose. Every Sith must attempt to orchestrate his own promotion. He stayed silent, suppressing an eye roll. "If that was meant to be reassuring, you failed. Now, back to my prisoner. There's one last possibility to break him. I thought it impossible, but perhaps there's a small chance you could pull it off." "I live to serve," Morgan told him sincerely. It was, after all, very true. The Lord looked at him, but couldn't quite find anything wrong with that statement. Over a millennium past, the Emperor claimed Dromund Kaas and made the Dark Temple the epicenter of Dark Force energy. In the bowels of the temple, he conducted experiments that drained the knowledge and life essence from all the greatest Sith Lords of the time. Morgan resisted a sigh. It was, as he remembered, back to the jungle. The Emperor created a device called the Ravager. It ate his victim's mind and delivered to him their greatest secrets. "And what makes you think the Dark Council won't splat you like a bug the seconds you get your hands on it?" Morgan thought dryly. He decided that was actually a very good question. "Pardon, Master, but won't the Dark Council object to you possessing such an artifact?" he asked, much more politely. Barras actually laughed. "I do not plan on telling them, apprentice. Your worry warms my heart, but you are several decades too young to have any say in the matter." Morgan half bowed, dropping the matter. "Here's hoping they'll decide I was just following orders." He grimaced behind his helmet. "That's an uncomfortable parallel to draw. The Emperor keeps the Ravager hidden in the Dark Temple, which has, in his absence, become a death trap. There's a good chance the horrors that await you will be too severe. But it's worth your life to me. Go there, and retrieve it," Barras ordered plainly. "Be swift, apprentice, and try not to die." "As you command, Master." Morgan bowed. He was halfway out the door when Barras spoke up again, Morgan finding that to be a favorite tactic of his. "Before I forget, I commend you. Experimenting on your slave shows ruthlessness I heartily approve of. Twist her till she breaks, and become all the stronger for it. It has proven most helpful, Master." Morgan couldn't help but agree. It wasn't his fault the man assumed incorrectly. Vetter was waiting outside the citadel proper, holding a taxi as she argued with some attendant. It was quite the sight, so he decided to indulge. Morgan watched, neither party seeming to notice him. He finally stepped in when a well-dressed older man joined them, speaking calmly to the attendant. "And she is the head of his retinue to boot. Ah, here he is in the flesh. Go on, don't lose your nerve now." The attendant very much seemed to have lost his nerve, but to Morgan's surprise rallied after taking a breath. As I was saying to your slave, holding transportation is against protocol. Taxis can be reserved, of course, but the system relies on the constant availability of transportation. That actually sounded rather reasonable to him. Fortunately, he was Sith, and thus did not need to be reasonable if he didn't want to be. He also didn't like the man, but that was beside the point. The old man spoke, snorting as he pushed the attendant away. I've met blind, deaf comatose patients with more self-preservation than you. Let's go, before the Sith decides a spot of mayhem sounds like fun. Morgan raised an eyebrow as the protesting attendant was ushered away, looking at Veta. She shrugged. No clue. Was about 5 seconds away from punching him, though, so he probably saved the man's life. Morgan climbed in the vehicle, punching in the coordinates to some out-of-the-way cantina. Considering your strength, that's very likely true. The ride was silent, Morgan busy thinking about the best way to approach the Dark Temple. A frontal assault seemed foolish, but he honestly wasn't seeing any other way. From what he remembered, there was at least one lord in the encampment containing the temple, so taking command wasn't possible even if he could get away with it. His mind was just coming up with something when Veta spoke. Sorry about abandoning you back there, she blurted. Not that I could have really done anything, but Barras gives me the creeps. So, sorry. Morgan looked at her sideways. Don't apologize. It must have hurt, without shields as you are. The less contact you have with Sith like Barras the better, and like you said, it's not like you could have done anything. Oh. Veta looked at him. Then why have you been so silent? What? I was thinking. Assaulting the temple will be hard, so maybe we could corral some beasts to help us or something. Veta looked at him questionably. I mean, the plan needs work, but that's the best I've got. Morgan defended. Unless you've got something better. She sighed. What temple, Morgan? I wasn't in the room, remember? Ah, right. Sorry. The next, and hopefully last, task Barras has for us. Getting a mind break device from the Dark Temple. It is, naturally, deep in the jungle. Veta blushed, looking away. We're getting what for Barras now? The Ravager. He clarified. It's a device meant to read the minds of prisoners, extracting information and the like. Morgan's mind caught up with itself, grinning at her. Why, what did you think I meant? Nothing. She protested. So what we having for lunch? It was the least subtle redirect he'd ever heard, but he took mercy on her anyway. We're not going for the food so much as the privacy. Teacher thinks I'm more or less ready to, as he put it, harden the force around you. Oh, cool. Veta smiled, previous mortification forgotten. Best if we go somewhere semi-public then. Too private and it's 10 to 1 the place is bugged to hell. Morgan nodded, changing their destination with a few taps. It still took him by surprise how vast the city was, even if it wasn't an ecumenopolis like Nar Shaddaa or Coruscant. The cantina was busy, but securing a private booth wasn't too hard. His lightsaber, while drawing some attention, wasn't too uncommon either. His perception told him there were 4 more Sith on this street alone. It appeared even Sith needed to relax. Teacher hovered in the middle of the table, turning around inquisitively. I haven't been to a cantina in centuries. It's been one library after another, really. Looking for the dancers? Veta teased. I don't think it's that kind of establishment. I seem to lack the hormones that would make that an enjoyable experience. Teacher admitted dryly. Now, since my subtle attempt at ascertaining our purpose here went so far over your heads it achieved stable orbit, what are we doing in a cantina? Veta pouted as Morgan answered. We're being sent to the Dark Temple, so it seems this is the best time to make Veta force resistant. Yup, she agreed. Ready to be turned into Beskar. Teacher sighed audibly. The Dark Temple. If I didn't know better I'd think your master wants you dead. The cube pivoted to look at him. Actually, I don't know better. Does Barras want you dead? Not quite yet, Morgan said. It seems I have yet to outlive my usefulness. Shall we start? Very well. The cube agreed. Hardening the force, or the more technical the application of fortifying force around an individual, in order to impart protective qualities and enhance resilience, because scientists can't be concise even if it kills them, can only be applied to those not able to sense it. This was, in fact, the main area of research. The Lord in question wanted a way to protect himself absolute, without needing to waste attention and power on shields. Teacher shook his head, the cube doing a surprisingly good job of conveying the gesture. They didn't quite fail, but it was not the breakthrough the Lord hoped for. Hardening the force around someone made them resistant, that much they accomplished. It also cut off the subject's ability to interact with the force in any way, making it rather useless for the Lord's intended purpose. Vetter piped up. But it'll work for me, right? No more sending little old Vetter flying around the room. Or off a building. Yes, teacher agreed. It will work for you. So why not enhance some soldiers, Mandalorians, for example, and send them to kill Jedi or other Sith? Seems obvious. She questioned. We've already been over this. Pay more attention. The cube scolded. Fleshcrafters were rare to begin with, and even less wanted to create beings capable of killing them. The Force is an enormous advantage against any opponent, and they were not eager to remove it. Right. Vetter waved. We've already been over this. No need to repeat yourself. Morgan interrupted before he could find out if teacher could still strangle people. So how does it actually work, then? Teacher flew over to him, clipping Vetter in the shoulder. She yelped. I should by all rights refuse to make that creature any more unkillable than she is now. But if you insist, feel her, all of her, as you did when you strengthened her body. This time, feel her soul. Morgan did, not seeing how Vetter's cheeks flushed. Now gather the force around her, like you would build a shield. Applying a shield was actually the first thing they tried, but shields require constant upkeep. Instead of doing that, freeze the force around her soul. Begin slow, and do not mind when it starts to move again. Like I said, this will need to be done once every day or so. Teacher muttered instructions as he worked, the practice he had done to the beasts in the jungle paying off. It still took him close to an hour, but soon enough he was finished. He saw Vetter breathing a little hard as he opened his eyes, frowning in concern. Everything all right? That took longer than I thought it would. Just fine, boss, she said faintly. Not quite used to people messing with my soul is all. Teacher huffed. You can't feel your soul. The creature must be messing with us again. Oi, I've a name. Vetter protested. And I will use it when you prove to be less annoying than a mosquito. Vetter leaned back, horror written over her face. Take that back. No. She mumbled an old child's tune as she dropped from the tree, landing easily. Her new strength still brought glee to her like little else ever had, and she would take any opportunity to flex it. Vetter shook her head as they came to the camp, walking forward to speak with the troopers on guard. Her boss was busy broodily staring at the temple, even if she had to admit it was quite the sight. Lord Morgan to see whomever is in charge, she said formally. The trooper snapped a salute, scurrying into the base. That's also pretty cool. Vetter admitted to herself. Effectively holding the rank of captain really did wonders for the cooperation of the rank and file. She looked back, seeing Morgan just stand there. She was forced to admit, did help. She skipped over. What you doing? Her boss shook his head, his eyes focusing on her. It was unnerving how piercing his stare could be, even through his helmet. Or maybe she was imagining things. She did that sometimes, feeling for beasts. There appears to be a large concentration somewhere east of here, likely near a water source. She hummed in agreement, filed away his absent-mindedness and wondered if some arcane piece of knowledge was about to be revealed. It had happened before, and she wasn't stupid. Liked to pretend to, sometimes. and she wasn't winning any academic awards, to be sure. But she was observant, and very good at judging character. So a man, ignorant of the most basic things, yet knowing the most arcane lore, was either lying or suffering from memory loss. And her boss's memory was fine. He knew more than he was telling, that much was clear. Still, he was entitled to his secrets, just as she was to hers. A Sith came walking up, interrupting her daydreaming. Simple robes hung off his frame, with no armor to be seen underneath. At last, the Dark Council has answered my petitions and sent a powerful fighting Sith to help secure the temple. She raised an eyebrow, hidden behind her helmet. That was a rather warm welcome, especially from a lord. He's either desperate or nice, and I'm betting on desperate. I'm afraid not, my lord. Her boss answered. She hated hearing the plain, polite voice he used when talking to other Sith. Devoid of all personality or emotion. It reminded her of what little he had told her about his life before they met. It matched her darkest days blow for blow and then some. Of course. I've been ignored again. How stupid of me. The Lord muttered. Do they have any idea the work we're doing here? Those pretend Sith in the temple wake up another sleeping ancient and the whole of Dromund Kaas is dead. Seems like maybe we have a shuttle to catch. She muttered. The Lord's head snapped to her, glaring. Her boss half-stepped in front of her, grabbing his attention. She smiled behind her helmet, touched. I may not have been sent by the Dark Council, but I have been given the authority to enter the temple. The Lord sighed, glaring at Morgan instead. That's something. You could still save this planet, if you act fast. The temple is old, much more so than many know. The Emperor built it on already ancient ruins, constructed by unknown hands. His slain enemies still hold power, and he filled the temple to the brim. It was sealed, yes? Morgan asked. He continued without waiting for an answer. And let me guess, someone went looking for new toys. Ironic, I suppose. The Lord nodded, clearly unhappy himself. With his attention elsewhere, the ambitious and foolish have become bold. Truly, the most dangerous combination in any Sith. They awoke an ancient, Lord Calig. Their expedition was plunged into madness, as were the 4 others before I assumed command. Estimated Sith? Morgan inquired politely. Over 20 in the first expedition alone. The Lord said grimly. And that's not counting the pretend Sith, who wield very real power. What scant report we recovered did suggest an internal struggle, so I cannot speak to the current number of souls in the temple. How can I assist? Veta rolled her eyes. Offering to help looked better than being ordered to, but still. Offering just rubbed her wrong. Fuse the half-ton hinges on the tomb doors, and even a violent assault should not awaken them. A copy of the latest map and the locations of the doors will be sent. The Lord waved to a soldier close by, who saluted and ran off. The team before me had the right idea, if the wrong execution. They hauled a metal torch inside, industrial, strong enough to warp the hinges. Recover it, seal the tombs. A strangled wailing noise reached them, emanating from the temple. Soldiers shook in fear, with some even dropping their weapons altogether. Only the 3 of them remained unaffected, and Veta realized her mistake when the Lord looked at her curiously. Force stuff. Great. Now he knows something is special about me. Veta mentally complained. The Lord turned back to Morgan. Best hurry. Those have been growing in power for days. They walked off after her boss bowed, a gesture just as devoid of personality as his speech. It was only when they were alone, somewhat closer to the beasts he had felt before, that some semblance of life returned to him. In the form of annoyance, something she was quite proud of. Let go of the swamp thing, Veta. This is a real snake, she said proudly. I think so anyway. Look, it has legs. That means it's a snake. It most certainly does not, Morgan sighed. Now throw it away before we find out if it's poisonous. Venomous. She corrected, throwing the probably not a snake away. It's poisonous if you eat it and get sick. Venomous means you get sick when it bites you. Morgan turned his back to her. For all I know, you were about to take a bite out of it. She let that one pass, smirking. Operation Break the Robot completed, flawless victory. She bounced after him. So what's the plan? We gonna do the thing we did on Korriban? You know, where we made the beasties eat each other. How would that help? He corrected pointedly. Am not. Cooperation should be just as possible. Let's hope my ability to mess with the minds of lesser sentients has improved, because I don't see another way of breaking past 200 madness-induced soldiers. We did it with the rebellion. She shot back. That was way more than a few hundred, and you walked in like you owned the place. Morgan motioned her to stop, jumping up a tree. His voice cracked over the calms as she followed. These aren't barely armed slaves. And I somewhat doubt my ability to intimidate the mad, nor am I all that eager to find out if my lightsaber can reflect hundreds of blasters. That was fair, she privately admitted. Veta looked down, only one drinking Sleen to be seen. One does not an army make, she quoted glibly. Morgan stayed silent, to her disappointment. Several minutes of boredom passed, until the Sleen stopped drinking and ambled over. Morgan's voice finally came over the calms. I've suppressed its competitive nature, and convinced it this is a good place for a nap. Some few dozens will do. Let's go. She followed, and several boring hours passed. First they had to find them, something made rather easy by Morgan's ability to hone in on them. Then it was several minutes of hiding in trees, trying not to spook the things. Then they usually walked away from the water, settling down for their naps. When they finally gathered enough, Morgan insisting 4 dozen was better than 3, they had to gather them all up again. To make it worse, Morgan went silent when they had collected about a dozen together. Apparently it takes concentration to stop them from killing each other, and this is way more difficult than it looks. Her boredom was replaced by nerves as they finished collecting their hoard. She had killed all of the beasts they had gathered here before, true. But hearing them hiss and roar as they bumped into each other made her question the soundness of this plan. Theory is all well and good, but if you lose control of this many, they'll break down the damn trees to get to us. She grumbled. She had been able to get him to not add any climbers to their ranks, so that was a small consolation. Should give her about a 5-second head start before the trees came falling down. Finally, after both a boring and nerve-wracking afternoon, they reached the edge of the temple. It loomed above them, easily clearing the tallest trees. Morgan stilled, the horde roaring as they charged. They went unnoticed amidst the charging tide, hiding high up into the tree line. She had to admit it was quite the sight. Almost enough to make up for the sheer boredom. Almost. Mad soldiers and Sith noticed quickly, but it did them little good. The fight moved further ahead, so she grabbed her sniper. Its scope allowed her to see the Sith had almost immediately withdrawn to the entrance, where they stood their ground. Behind them were scores of troopers and armed slaves. It was disconcerting to see not a single one waver as the beasts closed the distance, finally done snacking on the few too slow to run. She estimated at least 30 dead already, the rest either guarding the entrance or inside the building. So what you do to make them charge like that? She asked idly. The Sith had shot forward, cutting down near a fourth of the horde in one swoop. She saw several jump out of the melee, but most didn't. Stupid. Not like the Force makes you immune to claws and teeth. Breeding frenzy. Morgan answered, having produced a set of binoculars from his pouch. She smirked, knowing the phrase special sight for special boys could be found on them. Veta couldn't wait until he found it. It was one of the few things most of them have in common, and I even convinced them the little hairless apes were taking their mates away. That's sexist. She half-mindedly argued. With the Sith having so selflessly sacrificed themselves, the soldiers were having a shit time of it. The beasties were in a proper mood, and the low power of most blasters did little more than annoy them. I said mates, not women. Morgan argued back, just as distracted as she was. Some of those brave volunteers were female, I'll have you know. The last of the troops retreated back into the temple, followed closely by half the remaining horde, and she was about to sarcastically congratulate him when they came storming back out. She was about to ask Morgan what had happened when she saw herself. The beasts were taking the place of the dead soldiers, splitting in groups and actually patrolling. She looked to the entrance to see an old man walk back inside, slave collar still on his neck. Fuck. Morgan cursed. I've lost my connection to the beasts. This was a great plan. Veta mocked. Really, we've replaced mad soldiers with mad apex predators. Great strides have been made. Shut up. He snarked back. The Sith are dead, that's something. Let's see if we can sneak around to the entrance. The first part of the new plan, Veta thought, was going rather well. The wind was on their side, blowing their trail back into the jungle. While the beasts were patrolling, they weren't doing a particularly good job of it. Bad part was that they were significantly faster than normal guards, and also had excellent hearing. Still, she guided them without issue to as close to the entrance as the trees allowed. From there it was a matter of removing the 4 Yozuks adamantly sticking to the gaping dark hole that served as the entrance to the temple. Wait, aren't those nocturnal? Morgan suddenly asked. I mean, not to complain, but why were they just ambling around the jungle at midday? Veta looked through her scope, checking for any signs of an ambush. I assumed it was force fuckery. Eloquently put, as always. Morgan sniped. Planning something? Look, she said, motioning to the rest of the patrols. They're straying rather far. Further than they should, anyway. I think I can lure the lot guarding the entrance over here, but from there you'll need to be quick. Don't particularly feel like fighting all of them, Morgan agreed easily. 4 I can manage, however. His agreement caught her off guard slightly. Still not quite used to being treated seriously, eh? Veta slowed her breathing, aiming carefully. Killing one would likely draw the whole lot, so wounding would have to do. The shot rang true, completely silent if not for the grunting of the wounded beast. Her plan worked, but she had somewhat underestimated the speed of the things. They moved faster than they should, her hope of wounding them all vanishing as quickly as the beasts ran. Morgan dropped heavily to the ground, his landing swallowed by charging beasts. Muted red shone from below as Veta repositioned, using a vine to swing to another tree. Even with her own enhancements her boss's speed still amazed her. One moment a Yozuk was swinging a meaty fist, the next it was falling, Morgan riding the body to the ground. She managed one more shot before the melee grew too thick, but it didn't look like he needed it. Looking at him now, jumping and dismembering as he went, she wondered if he couldn't take the whole lot anyway. Veta voiced that question when the last beastie fell, her voice crackling over the calms. Not to question your lordness, but didn't look like you had too much trouble there. Morgan motioned to the entrance, and she followed high in the trees. Even if I could, and that's a maybe at best, it would take too much out of me. Not to mention doing so without sustaining injury is laughable. I heal fast, but not that fast. Yet. She didn't like how picturing a hurt Morgan made her feel. She had seen him with wounds, sure. But it was always the rugged, non-critical wounds. The kind that made people hotter, not sickly. Her mind flashed back to Korriban, to the first time she had met Teacher. Not that she knew his name back then. Morgan had been doing something to his hand, something reconnecting. Reconnecting nerves. Her mind supplied. What the fuck, he lost a hand? You lost a hand? She asked as they neared the door. More of an entrance, really, seeing as no actual door was to be found. Just a yawning chasm into darkness. Morgan flexed his right fist, making Veta frown. I reattached it. He assured her, unconcerned. Besides, that was months ago. She didn't reply, not liking the way her gut twisted. They entered as she stewed on her very much non-existing feelings. No one stopped them as they walked deeper inside, the map helping them avoid most of the traps. The sheer darkness, traps and creep factor did make for an excellent distraction. They made good time, seeing no sign of the pretend armies marked on the map. It wasn't until they came to the torch that something happened, several shadowy figures blocking both sides of the hallway. Her helmet let no sound escape as she hissed. "Don't suppose you neglected to tell me these guys were sneaking up on us because they were so weak it didn't merit the wasted oxygen?" Morgan didn't reply, turning to their ambushers. His voice came out amplified tenfold. "By the order of Lord Calig, you are to leave this temple and report on the outside world." Veta wondered briefly if he had been an actor in whatever life he had led before Korriban. She had seen two sides of him now, and only one she liked. His cold, detached persona creeped her the fuck out. She understood it, but she didn't like it. The second was as he was around her, sarcastic and easygoing. Now he sounded more like the lords she had heard on Korriban. His voice thundering not with anger, but impatience. As if it was never in question that they would obey. A tone that spoke of bored command, the natural order of things. It did funny things to her stomach, but now was not even remotely the time for that. The figures stilled, hesitating. Veta didn't blame them. "You speak for the ancient?" One of the figures walked forward, his black robes dusty and tattered. It was so old Veta wondered how it was still in one piece. "I speak with the authority of Sith," Morgan stated. "You and yours are to leave, right now." Some of their ambushers flinched, taking a step back. Their spokesperson didn't. He took a step forward instead. Her boss barked a laugh. "One more word, whelp, and your head will be on the floor." The stranger took another step forward. "You do not smell of the ancient. You smell of Wu." Morgan stepped, seeming to blur forward to her eyes. The man backtracked too slowly, and a dull thud resounded as his head smacked against stone. "Get the fuck out," Morgan ordered to the shadows. Veta lowered her blasters as the figures melted away, leaving their comrade's corpse behind. "Shit boss, didn't know you had it in you." "I did once command Sith," he answered calmly, sheathing his lightsaber. "They tend to need a firm hand, even if they are not as volatile as most. Glad that worked though. I'd rather save my strength." He picked up the torch, an unwieldy thing at the best of times. Veta made grabbing motions. "Gimme. I like big fire stick." Morgan handed it over, Veta grunting at the weight. She grinned as she managed to balance it. Never gets old. The doors were marked clearly enough, and they didn't encounter any more surprises along the way. Welding the hinges was harder than actually getting to the doors. In the end, and after some arguing, Veta balanced on Morgan's shoulders as she welded. It was just high enough to reach, and the torch was easy to use. The second vault went as smoothly as the first, but it was at the third that they encountered trouble. Not in the form of actual people, those had been suspiciously absent, but in the form of a hologram. A half-person. She decided. "Hello, stranger. My internal chronometer tells me it has been exactly 963 years since this hologram was made. Have the Sith truly lived in fear of me for so long?" "Yes," Morgan answered. The hologram flickered in surprise. "But you knew that. Just as you know that I can see you, ancient." It looked like a normal hologram to her, but she wasn't the expert here. "Ah, a fleshcrafter. Your kind always did have better sight than most." The hologram flickered more, half melting to reveal something not quite a person. Limbs were replaced with holographic representations, and its head was crowned with large horns. Veta resisted the urge to palm her blaster. Half-person indeed. Veta thought as it spoke. "I am, or was, Kelith a born Sith and follower of the Force. Like so many before me, I challenged the Emperor and was buried in this temple." Kelith stepped forward, slowly drifting to the floor. "It didn't quite take. I had just enough time to make this, a vessel for my consciousness." Morgan bowed politely, Veta taking a cautious step back. "Transferring my mind was more difficult than I imagined. This is what is left. Not a hologram, but not Kelith either. Something less than whole, but more than nothing. The Lord was silent for a few seconds, flickering as if distracted. It spoke up again, changing the subject abruptly. The way of the Sith lies in channeling the Force through the use of powerful emotions. Fear is the chief of these. The Sith feed on palpable dread. The Ancient looked at Morgan, who had taken off his helmet. Veta took another step back. It's a lie. Fear is a lie. Passion, a lie. Fear gives temporary power, and passion is easily manipulated. Real strength in the Force comes when one is no longer afraid. The Lord smiled broadly. But I don't have to tell you that, do I? To think you have managed to live this long, not even a Lord yourself. There is only the Force. Her boss said quietly. The Ancient laughed. Exactly. It seems I was not as forgotten as I had feared. Come, come. Sit. Ghostly chairs appeared from nowhere, and Veta had the distinct feeling she was out of her depth. Morgan sat without hesitation, but she had to resist poking the things. She didn't take a seat. Everything there is, life and death alike, is wrapped up in the Force. With it, the lines become blurred. What is dead will not die, and what is alive can feel far beyond what I ever thought possible. The chairs disappeared without warning, her boss somehow managing to stand instead of fall. Apologies. It seems I overtaxed myself. I would ask you to deliver my findings, but you are so much more than that. The Ancient looked behind himself, flickering again. It seems I must go. The device you seek is in the lower vaults, past strong defenses. Beware the puppets. Kelith faded, his horned helmet the last to go. He bowed his head. Blessed peace be upon you, Jedi. Veta sighed. Guess it was back to walking. Who knew that tomb raiding could be this boring? They journeyed to the vaults, their map showing its location. She could have sworn that section wasn't filled out before, but Morgan didn't seem to question it. It was when they passed the defenses, old and most in dire need of repair, that she spoke up. What's a Jedi? Sounds like Jedi. Morgan stepped over a pressure plate, his knives cutting through the starved beasts with ease. Poor things must have been here for generations. The precursors to both the Jedi and Sith. That order was founded on Tython, and disbanded 20,000 years ago? But why did he call you a Jedi? He sighed. Because unlike the Jedi and Sith, the Jedi embraced the Force whole. I do the same. His tone was quiet, so Veta looked around. No one was to be seen, of course. They hadn't seen anyone since the Ancient. She shrugged. So, if the Sith find out, they'll kill me. The Jedi will lock me up, and I'll spend the rest of my life in a small cell, prodded by every scientist and lawmaster they can find. Why? Because both orders fear what they don't understand. The Jedi will condemn me for using the dark, the Sith for the light. Either way, I'm a threat. That's stupid. Veta complained. That's religion, Morgan said dryly. She scowled at him playfully. I happen to be part of a religion myself. He ignited his lightsaber, cutting through the thick door that barred access to their price. That's your choice. I'm not saying faith is bad, just like I'm not saying it's good. I don't pray, but personal faith can give someone strength. A reason to move on, when everything tells you to give up. The door fell off its hinges, Morgan clipping his lightsaber to his belt again. It's organized religion that tends to do silly things like crusades, mass indoctrination and suppressing information. She didn't argue the point. It had been a token protest at best, and it's not like she was all that religious in the first place. She prayed to the goddess, of course, but it was informal. Personal. Her boss moved to the center of the room, a pedestal holding nothing but dust. An outline of missing dust showed the shape of a device twice the size of her hand. Morgan sighed. Well, mission failure. Let's get back to camp and see if the Lord there has any more information. Stumbling blindly around this place is likely to get us killed. Veta hummed in agreement. The trek back to the entrance was tedious more than dangerous, but the closer they came to the way out, the more tense she became. It wasn't until they were 4 hallways from fresh air that Morgan stopped her. Shadows melted from the walls, hidden passages opening to spit out many more. 100 souls barred their way before long. At their head was the old man she had seen walk back into the temple when the beasts had been turned against them. Dangling from his fingers was a device twice the size of her hand. "Looking for this, little intruders?"